Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's been a long time since I've been with the Rotary, so it's good to see some familiar faces. Hello, Zoom. This breaks a long-standing principle of mine of not doing Zoom. There you go, I'm doing Zoom. Today I was going to talk, I was listening to topics. Steve said that you had run out of people to talk during the hot weather, and he said, "Can you speak?" And I said, "Sure." So I'm speaking to you. And topics have been COVID related, is what I understand, over the last several weeks, maybe months. And so I thought, well, those of you that know me know I'm very apolitical. I just don't get involved in politics at all. So I figured, well, I can't talk about that. Those of you that know me know that I don't know much about medicine at all, so I couldn't talk to you about that. So I thought, if I'm going to talk on a COVID, I guess I would talk about my story and what happened on the business side of things. I think last time we were together, we were talking about durable goods and how a lot of companies use car sales and durable goods as a kind of as a bellwether for what the economy might look like in the future. And so I can explain to you what's happened. I actually even wrote down some dates for you. So this is my COVID story. It is kind of a journal of what I've learned over the last, what has it been, 4 months, 4 or 5 months. And some of the tips, some of the things I've learned, and as a bellwether for those of you that are in business for the future. So the first thing we did is on March 16th, that was pretty much when I panicked. We sat in a room. The order had been, the state of emergency was about March 4th, but there was no guidance. Some people had closed, some people had pretended nothing was going to happen. But by March 16th, that weekend was a really hard weekend. There was a lot of news, there was a lot of fear. And March 16th, I met with not only the people within my work, but I brought in some other folks to help me assess, what are we going to do? Are we going to reduce our workforce? Are we going to stay open? Are we going to close? What are we going to do? Here's a caveat. Those of you that lived through 2008, that was the worst days of my life, right? So picture yourself waking up in the middle of the night and, you know, never sleeping through the night, being sick to your stomach every day. And here we go, March 16th, saying, is this what it's going to be like? Or is it something different? And what we did is I got a great piece of advice from television. It was funny, as this went through, as COVID worked its way through the media, and you're watching the experts and you're listening to different stories, I feel like I was given a gift. I was given timely information at different times. And one of the lucky things I saw was I was on the Business Channel and I saw a gentleman who has over 500 small businesses, and he said, your long-term planning during COVID is 4 days. Your short-term planning is today. And just in the nick of time, I'm going into these meetings and I bring up that point, and the first rule I had with our business COVID planning was, we're going to talk at noon, we're going to talk at 5, and we have no plan past noon today. So if you look me in the eye, I look you in the eye, there's no one here, we're losing money hand over fist, we're going home. If it's going okay, well then we'll talk again at 5 p.m. and then we'll decide if we're opening tomorrow. That was as far as we were willing to look out on March 16th. Okay. March 19th. March 19th was Executive Order N3320. This was when the governor said, you're safer at home or stay at home. And the governor used a very unusual distinction when you're talking about a pandemic. He divided businesses into essential businesses and non-essential businesses, which was odd to me. I'm not a political person, so I don't see through how that works, what it means. However, it seemed to me that you would want to break things into high risk or low risk. But that's not what they did. They said, these are essential, these are not essential. So, public transportation, open, high risk, but essential. right? New York City, you're taking a subway, it's just jam full of people, but essential. I was deemed, well, we're on camera, I was deemed essential. How about that? I was deemed essential because we repair automobiles, and without an automobile, you can't get to where you're going. The way I interpreted that order was that all ancillary businesses to the essential business meant that all of those could be performed. In other words, if Target was open because it had food and it had pharmaceuticals, then the ancillary businesses, blue jeans and cosmetics, were also open because you can't split a business in half. So that was my interpretation, and that seemed to be an interpretation that was very helpful because I had competitors of mine who closed all the way completely. I had competitors of mine who closed their sales departments. I had competitors that did appointment only. They made up all kinds of fanciful ways to deal with what they were presented with. That said, despite the order, that gave me no assurance that anyone was actually going to show up. Fast forward. Strike that. Let me just give you one more little piece of advice. So we're doing this piece of history. So we're doing this 6 hours at a time thing, right? I'm there at 7. About 12 we're deciding. Well, what we found out was there were two very different types of people. There were people that were scared to death and were staying at home. And there were people that were actually going out of their way to come out and spend money. And frankly, having Disneyland closed, and having restaurants closed, and having all these other places people spend the money they're supposed to spend with me closed, this gave me an opportunity that I was able to provide a service and they had a little more in their pocket. In fact, customers were telling me, you can't believe how much money I'm saving because I can't go out to eat, or go to Disneyland, or go on vacation. And I said, this is great. But then things got different, even more weird. March 29th, 2020, Federal CARES Act passes. And what does this thing do? This little nugget, if you had your eye on the ball, was a serious blessing for those of us that were deemed essential, right? This meant if you were unemployed, underemployed, or claimed to be unemployed because you were an independent contractor, you get an additional $600 a week tax-free. Let me just provide some color. The Federal Reserve printed about $4 trillion worth of dollars, and they bought things like mortgages, auto loans, and they bought corporate debt that was packaged. This drove interest rates into the floor. The 10-year, I think today even, is 0.66. So, I don't know about you, well, I know most of you. You do not lend people money for 10 years at 0.66, not in this room. I mean, you people lend it like 60% for 10 years. But needless to say, 0.66. So the cars got more affordable. Now I got extra income coming in. And the cars took off. In the meantime, and if you haven't taken advantage of this, you can look into it still. There was a long-standing program for all California employers, including the Lakers, the Dodgers, that's called WorkShare. And that was one of the things we implemented prior to this date. WorkShare is where you can put every employee's name and get your plan registered with the state. And if you cut their hours, they get a percentage of that money back. Well, to the pleasure of our employees, the ones that we did cut their hours, the WorkShare ended up qualifying for underemployed, and they got the $600 extra a week, and they were working for us. So they were very happy about that situation. And so the WorkShare plans and people that did that found their employees in a happier, better position. All that being said, what was the net effect? Well, I mean, the net effect was there were certain people that were comfortable buying. And those people were in a better financial position than they had been. There were still people that were not comfortable coming. And so we had to walk a very fine line. Some people had to have vehicles brought to them at their home or picked up to be serviced. So we had to be flexible. We had to administer new cleaning and new sanitation regiments. In fact, our manufacturer required them to be part of their act. And so on this one hand, you've got this group that you're trying to keep the ball rolling. And on this other hand, you still have this obligation for public health and the safety of your customers. But the reason why I wanted to tell the story like the day the world didn't end is because I didn't think anybody was going to go out shopping in a pandemic. I really didn't. I figured this is it. I've been waiting for this day. And I don't know how many of you knew this, but in February, the United States went into recession before COVID. I mean, things were bleak in February, right? We were coming fresh off a trade deal where they were holding goods outside the country. The GDP was falling, and it had fallen for 2 consecutive quarters. My business was awful by February. And it had been bad for a year. So there was a tremendous juxtaposition with this pandemic for those of us that were deemed essential. And that's an unfair designation, no doubt, because I truly do feel for people that were told you can't operate anymore, regardless of whether you can prove you can do it safely. That said, that's why it is so different than 2008, and I hate the comparison. 2008, we were in it together. Nobody had any money, and we were all sitting here together looking at each other and nobody could buy anything. It was awful. This is different. This is a mandated, these people are going to do very well, and these people aren't going to do very well. So it's a different scenario. June 18th, this is the day I was sure I was going out of business. This is when they instituted the mask rule in California. I said, there's no way. I called Gabe Stein, I said, there's no way, that's it. There's no way someone's gonna walk in here with us wearing a mask, them wearing a mask, and buy a car. There's no way, it's too freaky, it's just it's spooky. Sold 5 cars that day. And Gabe told me, no man, you don't understand, that's the shield. That's like the, okay, I can go out now, I got my mask. And he was right. Now I tell you this as a perspective from someone who has nothing to gain by how you feel about what's going on. I tell it just as my story, throw it in with all the other